You ever realize that day after day, month after month, your house just get more and more clustered? You're finding things that you never knew you had just surrounding you, and before you know it, you're surrounded by junk that you never knew you had in the first place, and then it gets out of control, and then you're like screaming, "It's just junk after junk. How did I even get all this stuff in the first place?" I still remember when I allowed my house to pile up with useless junk I thought I needed. Every little object I ever owned had its own little spot in my house. I even kept a few broken headphones because I thought I could use the left earpiece that still worked a little. I won't go deep into the details, but it wasn't pretty. My house was probably a few items away from being a possible thrift store. But one day, after reading a certain book, I noticed that it was pointless to hold onto any little object I sort of liked. It was like keeping every shoebox I ever had for no good reason. So after following a few points, I only kept the items that I had a deep connection with. And yes, if you're clingy like me, it can be hard at first because you sort of have a strange bond with every little object in your home. It can even be a bubblegum wrapper you had since 5th grade. But that's what Marie Kondo goes over in The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. She explains how it's important to not think about what you can eliminate, but what makes you happy. And the first point she goes over is, know why you want to declutter and why you want to tidy up. Before I had the motivation to tidy up my home, I had to think over why I wanted to do it in the first place. And it was mainly because I wanted to have a home where I wouldn't be embarrassed by my clustered filth. I began to notice all the objects I had stored in my home because I didn't touch it for several years. And although I was used to seeing a house with pieces of paper lying on the floor and a few shirts on my couch, that didn't mean I was comfortable with it. I just became used to it because it became a negative habit I developed, unfortunately. But I knew every time I did pick up the motivation to clean up my home, I felt refreshed and renewed. And I wanted that feeling to last much longer than just a few days because I knew I was going to fall off the wagon again and clutter my home. And I knew if I truly sorted out the items I needed versus the ones I just kept for any little reasons, it would be possible. And the next point is, respect your belongings and learn to let go. When we begin to tidy up our lives, a mistake we normally make is starting with the big objects first. I remember when I first started tidying my home, I was excited when I began until I looked down at my Wii, knowing that I didn't play for who knows how long. However, the thought of giving that up didn't seem so pleasing, so I felt discouraged and procrastinated on tidying up for that day. But the way Mary explains to go by is to first start with objects that aren't so difficult to get rid of. Examples would be clothes, books, and papers. Try to make it miscellaneous items because they're easier to get rid of. So rather than touch anything that's electronic, I decided to start off with my clothing since I had a ton of shirts in my closet that I didn't even look at anymore. I had to be honest with myself and choose the shirts and jeans I didn't wear for a year. And if you're having trouble with getting rid of your belongings, think of it as choosing what you love rather than what you need to get rid of. Chances are, if you're like me and my friends, you have around 10 shirts you love to wear the most. The rest are just there for emergency days or to wear while you're doing the laundry. And no, you don't have to get rid of 95% of your clothing either. If you have shirts or jeans you only wear on special occasions, just keep the top clothing you love to wear in your closet as you fold the rest you don't need into a drawer or suitcase. Just make sure it's in a place that you don't see it every day. And what's great is that the more you clean out your closet, the more it opens your eyes to what you actually enjoy wearing. You save money by realizing you weren't into a certain brand of clothing or a style you thought you liked. And this saves you money in the future because you're not mindlessly buying clothing like those. Not to mention you also save time because you're not browsing through a library of clothing just to determine what you should wear to the supermarket. And the third is to keep only the things that spark joy. Mary mentions that if you pick up an object that doesn't send you a rate of joy, then perhaps it's time to get rid of it. For smaller objects like shoes or paper, it can be easy. But for the objects like my bookshelf, that was a different story. She mentions if you haven't read the book by now, then perhaps it was meant to teach you a lesson that you weren't meant to read it in the first place. But I like to keep my books for reference, so rather than throwing the books I haven't touched yet, I just place them in my bigger bookshelf in the back of my home, while I keep the books I want to read in the bookshelf next to my desk. That way, I set my mind to knowing that those are my important books, as the rest are just archived for later use. However, as I arranged my books, I noticed there were some useless ones that I had no values in keeping, and those are the ones I got rid of. But continuing on with this rule to other objects, it was easier to tell whether something brought true value in my life. I knew my old boxes weren't doing nothing more than taking up space in my closet, and I had no joy looking at them, so I tossed those out. I didn't feel any emotional connection to a few bike equipment that I forgot I had, and threw those out too. And yes, I know you won't feel a deep connection with every object in your house like your keys or your pillow, but you need them anyway because they're household essentials you'll need later on. Which is why you should also determine the amount of times you use it along with the emotional value it brings you. If you use a cup every day of the week, but you aren't in love with it, that doesn't mean you need to get rid of it. But if you have a watch you haven't touched since last year, then perhaps it is time to get rid of that. As for the things that you have a deep connection with, like a gift from your grandmother or a priceless souvenir you received years ago, keep those in a small single box instead of lying around in your home. That way, you have the objects that really stand out to you in a safe stored location. The fourth idea she goes over is, what you don't need, your family don't need either. Sometimes when we give our clothing away to friends and family, we still have that small part of us that wants them back when we see them wearing them. Remember the good times we had in that t-shirt, those jeans, or that purse. And as a result, we prevent ourselves from giving away future objects and pick up hoarding habits again. So what helps is rather than giving away something to someone you see often, throw them away or give them to charity. This destroys all temptations of ever thinking if you truly want to get rid of that object. The less you see it, the easier it gets to let go of it. However, not everyone can follow this rule. You might know someone who would enjoy something you're getting rid of, couldn't afford it, or always wanted something like it. So if you like to give your clothing or anything else away to a family member or friend, give it a shot and see how it goes. If you find yourself picking up selfish habits because you're tired of seeing your friends or family using what you previously gave them, that's when you need to start giving away your future items to charity, or to the very least, throw them away. And the last idea is to treat your items like gold. Once you begin limiting the amount of objects you keep in your home, you'll want to treat each item like an athlete does for his equipment. When a hockey player gets a new piece of gear, his first thought isn't going to be on how you get treated like trash. He's going to take care of it and ensure it doesn't break because he's going to need it for protection when he's either practicing or playing a game. And such as an athlete who protects his equipment to prevent future injuries, we need to treat our objects just the same. I remember when I bought a new pair of shoes, I never thought about the importance of being careful with them when I played outside. And by the end of the month, they were always torn apart because of my recklessness. It's easy to see our laptop, our television, or the Xbox as lifeless objects, which they technically are, but it makes you less concerned about accidentally destroying them. When you get angry at your computer, it's easy to want to kick it until it cries. But as a result, what usually happens is that we shorten the lifespan of those objects. So if you treat everything you use with great care, you extend the life of those objects to its fullest extent and save time and money in the future by not needing to replace them. And that's the life-changing magic of tidying up by Marie Kondo.